Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Hope we're all having a great middle of the week on this hump day. And this is really whenever things are really kicking off on this Wednesday with this big storm system that we've been talking about. So we've already got some severe weather out there, likely getting going and getting organized. And I don't really expect that to calm down until we get past kind of Fridays, whenever things should become much better across much of the country. So that's the main goal of today's video, is to tell you all about that severe weather, that snow, and this just storm in general that is really bringing in March with a bang out there. And today's video might be a little bit longer because of that, and I do plan on going region by region, breaking it down for you from all the different threats that we are dealing with and going pretty in depth. So this might be more of a 20-minute video than a 10-minute video, but whenever you have so much to talk about, you got to use all the time that you need. So let's go ahead and get right into it, just so this isn't too terribly long. But going ahead and looking at radar out there, this is that beginning of the severe weather down here into the Arkansas area. So I'm going to zoom in on this, and you can see some of these storms that are firing back towards the Dallas area on this Wednesday evening are going to begin to organize. And as they move up into the Arkansas area and into Little Rock, Memphis, and even back towards the Shreveport, Monroe area here, these storms are going to really begin to organize and have the chance to become severe before eventually tracking even further east overnight. And then we get round 2 tomorrow through this area that will be likely even stronger than today. But looking at satellite, you can see that pretty well here. This is that storm system out into California beginning to ramp up. And as we get into tomorrow and this kind of dives out of the Four Corners and gets into Texas, that's whenever it's going to feed into this warm springtime air that's being advected northward out of the Gulf of Mexico. And with that, we're going to get some pretty strong storms here to start off March for many of us in this section of the country. So taking a look at what we're seeing out there right now, it has been a crazy spring-like day, and I want to show this to you just so you know why we're going to get these storms, just to show you how hot it is. Back here down towards the Rio Grande, kind of in the Brownsville, Texas area, we're in the upper 90s today to start March, and even into sections of Mexico here, we're pushing 100 in places. And other than that, we have widespread 80s along the Gulf of Mexico, 70s north of there, as far north as central Ohio getting into the 70s today. So we have a very large warm sector here across the country, and these storms are going to be able to feed on that warm air and really help to become quite strong and dangerous as they push east across the country over the next couple of days. Taking a look at the hazards out there, we do have some flash flood watches up here into sections of Arkansas, into western Tennessee, northern Mississippi, Alabama, southern Missouri, and Illinois, and even extreme western Kentucky there for all this rain we're about to see with this storm system as it begins to kind of track really right through this area. So that's where we're expecting most of the heavy rain to kind of fall, is in that section of the country there. Other than that, we do have a lot of red flag warnings out here into Texas today for those windy conditions, and then a bunch of winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings back towards the Four Corners for all of that snow that is falling with that low pressure that is back towards that direction right now. So giving you a quick overview of this storm system as a whole, you can see today these are those storms that we're dealing with out here across sections of Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi. And this first round of storms over the next couple of hours and into tomorrow morning is going to push east eventually into the Carolinas, where we'll see some rain tomorrow morning. And again, this is just the first round. We then get round 2 tomorrow as this low pressure, you can see, dives out of the Four Corners, gets into Texas into tomorrow afternoon, and with that, that's when we're going to get these storms to fire. And these storms will be fierce, let me tell you here, especially from Dallas back towards Shreveport and up towards Little Rock. So I really expect some of these storms to really become severe tomorrow. But this low pressure in general begins to organize, continues to push east, including severe weather tomorrow evening. And then eventually, as it gets up here into kind of the Missouri area, we're going to get some snow on the northern end of this. So we're going to have snow on the northern end of this going into Friday, as well as severe storms on the southeastern end of this in that warm sector. And you can see that continues to unfold, and then we get some pretty hefty snow up into the Great Lakes going into Friday evening and night, and then into Saturday we get those winter storm conditions into New England, and even into Saturday afternoon. Before going into kind of Saturday night, the system finally clears out of the country, and we have a much nicer Sunday in store for many of us. So taking a look here at that severe weather today, you can see we already have this area outlined from Arkansas back all the way over towards Huntsville, Alabama, in that slight risk and that enhanced risk, more specifically over here towards Little Rock and Memphis, and even into northern Mississippi. But we have a marginal risk today all the way from Ohio back towards almost the Mexico border, and then over through Atlanta, Georgia, and even as far east as Oconee County, South Carolina, in that marginal risk today for those storms as they begin to push further east into tonight. As we get into tomorrow, though, I think that's whenever we really get the peak out of this system. As you can see, we already have a moderate risk issued here from kind of the eastern suburbs of Dallas back towards Shreveport, Louisiana, and up towards the southern suburbs of Little Rock, kind of in that triangle there. Already in a moderate risk for tomorrow for some of those storms, but the slight risk and enhanced risk are even further out than that, including areas like Memphis, more of the Fort Worth area, back down towards Baton Rouge, Louisiana, also in that risk of severe weather tomorrow. And then as we get into Friday, we have a big area here outlined in that slight risk here from Atlanta, Georgia, Birmingham, Alabama, Huntsville, Nashville, Knoxville, the Tri-Cities, Charlotte, North Carolina, even as far down south as Savannah and Charleston in that slight risk. And Friday's a really tough forecast, I'll tell you. So I think once we get closer to Friday, this area should be more confined and a little bit better mapped out for you. But unfortunately, we just kind of have to wait till we get a little bit closer and get closer to some of those mesoscale models to really tell you what Friday is going to be like. But as we get through tomorrow, we'll have a much better idea of what Friday's severe weather threat will look like. So going region by region here, we'll start here in the South Central Plains where we're already seeing some of those storms fire. And we'll move this ahead, and let me actually, I guess the map is running a little slow, so sorry. Let me go ahead and refresh this for you. Sorry about that. But anyway, as we get into today or into tonight, again, those storms are going to begin to fire across sections of southern Arkansas where we have that chance to see some strong storms. And then this kind of line of storms begins to push further east into the overnight, into Memphis, northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, before we get a bit of a lull in the overnight. Before tomorrow afternoon, we get another round of these storms to begin to develop. And this will likely come in a couple of waves tomorrow. So during the first half of tomorrow, we may get one quick round of storms to push through. And then as we get into tomorrow evening, this line of storms will really begin to develop. And this is going to pack a real punch as it moves through. We'll even get some isolated cells in front of that line, and that's where we're going to likely have the biggest tornado threat. But again, that main line of storms moves through during the evening tomorrow and even into the overnight for many areas here. And this will pose the risk of embedded tornadoes as well as just a lot of really strong wind through this line of storms going into tomorrow evening. So continuing to push this ahead into time as we get really past midnight tomorrow, the threat should begin to wind down as this low pressure pulls north and pulls out of the area. So taking a look at the tornado parameters for this, again, you can see today and this evening we already have some pretty high tornado parameters here across southern Arkansas and northern Louisiana, and even back towards the Mississippi and Alabama area. And this is with that first round of storms that I was talking about before eventually those ingredients die down as we get into the overnight tonight. But as we go right back into tomorrow, we get another surge of these ingredients. And you can see this is a big area here that is going to have a chance at some really strong storms capable of producing tornadoes tomorrow evening. And once you start seeing these kind of purple colors mix in here, I'll pick a different color so you can see a little bit better. But once you start seeing these purple colors here mix in, that's whenever you really have problems. That's whenever you know the models are telling us these are going to be very strong storms and they're going to pack quite a punch and likely a couple strong tornadoes even with them. So this really looks to be the peak tomorrow evening. Likely the sun will already be down around this time, so a bit of a nocturnal threat here for a lot of us in Arkansas and Louisiana tomorrow evening before eventually, finally, that threat dies down going into the kind of really past midnight tomorrow, I would say, before we get another flare-up on Friday that we'll talk about here in a second. So talking about that Friday threat now and what's left of this kind of other storms that we have right now, we're going to look at the southeast. So again, right now we have these rounds of storms moving through sections of Arkansas, Louisiana overnight tonight. These are going to push further east into the Carolinas, although weakening luckily as we go through the night. But nonetheless, it's going to be a pretty big shield of rain and even some storms embedded in this. So tomorrow morning, whenever you're getting out and commuting, I would expect a line of maybe even some thunder and lightning, excuse me. But even if not that, definitely just some heavy rain tomorrow morning for your Thursday commute from Greenville, Spartanburg up towards Charlotte, back towards Atlanta. Seeing some rain tomorrow morning, maybe even some storms. And we'll have to watch to see if some of those severe ingredients can hold on long enough. Maybe some of these could be severe overnight into tomorrow morning. So definitely don't want to let your guard down around these areas. But that begins to clear out during tomorrow afternoon with kind of some just leftover showers and maybe a couple storms through that kind of highlighted area there during Thursday afternoon. But the main threat here will be on Friday for much of the southeast. And you can see that as we get here into Friday afternoon, I want you to watch this line of storms back west begin to push east. And the biggest question mark here will be forcing. And what we mean by that is, can these storms really even begin? Can they organize and grow? Because there is plenty of wind shear here to work with in the southeast on Friday. The biggest question just is, will the storms form at all? Or will we kind of just have this broken line here of showers that push through this very capable atmosphere of producing strong storms? So I definitely think we'll have some instability and definitely plenty of wind shear, but just whether or not this low pressure here pushes too far north that it can't really help these storms force or cause the air to rise and then, cause these storms to initiate and form. That will be the big question for Friday, and that's something we're just going to have to really wait and see. But right now, the latest NAM model here shows kind of really just a broken line of showers and storms here in the southeast that kind of struggle to really get going and organize into stronger storms. But again, we have the ingredients there. We just need the storms to kind of be forced, if you will, to lift up and form on Friday. And we'll have a much better idea of what we can expect after we get into tomorrow and get more of those close range models into this time frame to look at that a little bit better. But nonetheless, looking at those tornado parameters, first we'll start with tonight, of course. We have widespread area here into northern Mississippi and even into northern Alabama with the chance of some of these storms producing tornadoes into the evening tonight. And that's why we have that risk that we talked about. And luckily that begins to die down as we lose some of that instability. But as we get into tomorrow morning, again, we got to be careful here with that leftover broken line of showers and storms. They could still tap into maybe just enough wind shear to get a couple of maybe severe storms tomorrow morning, although you can tell here that the ingredients are not nearly as much as places tonight back west. But eventually that will die down before then again we get into Thursday afternoon, and you can see that threat really building back out west as we talked about. And then eventually into Friday, those ingredients push back east, and you can see we do get a flare up here on Friday of those ingredients with that line of broken showers and storms that eventually moves through the southeast here, through Birmingham, Atlanta, and eventually into the Carolinas. So we definitely have the ingredients there. Just the main question, again, as we talked about, is will the storms really be able to form at all? So now we got through those places, let's go ahead and take a look at the Ohio River Valley and see what we can expect here in these areas. So, I'm sorry, I had to take a sip of my drink there. Anyway, though, so going into tonight, again, I'm expecting some pretty widespread rain here through much of the Ohio River Valley, and I'm not expecting too much severe weather out of these. I think most of that severe weather threat will be isolated further south here, but could see a couple severe storms here on the leading edge of this kind of shield of rain, but it looks mainly like a lot of rain tonight here from places in Kentucky, most of Tennessee seeing some rain overnight before we get a bit of a lull going into tomorrow afternoon before the main system moves through, going into tomorrow evening and into tomorrow overnight. You can see all of this rain moving into the Ohio River Valley. And this will be heavy at times, and that's why we have some of those flash flood watches out that we talked about as the shield of rain moves through. Now, eventually, as we get into Friday afternoon, I do think we get enough dynamic cooling and enough cold air brought in here on the backside that we'll see some snow on the northern fringe of this and kind of the northwestern side of this. And you can see that here on our latest model, showing some of that snow falling there into sections of Missouri going into Friday afternoon, and even into Friday afternoon we'll have to watch some of these storms on the other side. So we could likely be dealing with some severe storms back here into Tennessee on Friday afternoon, and then snow on the northern side of the system. So a very dynamic system for sure. And you can see that continues to work through the area on Friday afternoon, again with this dual threat of severe storms and snow ongoing at the same time. before eventually this kind of helps or begins to work out of the area going into the second half of Friday and into Friday evening. So again, just to review here into the Ohio River Valley, the main impact day here will be Friday. We'll watch for severe storms here with this line of storms, and then of course snow on the northern side of this system before it moves out going into overnight Friday. So showing you those significant tornado parameters here because, again, we are expecting severe weather in this part of the country as well. Again, tonight, maybe a quick flare up here into sections of Tennessee, but I won't expect anything too crazy out of this before eventually we get that kind of lull that we were talking about on Thursday. Before then going into Friday, we get those ingredients to build kind of back in here with that line of storms. So watching Kentucky here back towards Nashville, Knoxville, and then, of course, areas back further south we've already talked about on Friday afternoon. Before into the overnight Friday, those ingredients begin to die down, and we have much nicer weather in store for us on Saturday. So showing you some snowfall totals here. Up here into Missouri, I think 1 to 3 inches is looking pretty likely here into northern Missouri. And then the other areas we'll talk about here in a second. So, speaking of that, we'll go ahead and move to the Midwest now, where here I'm not expecting much of a severe weather threat, but definitely some snow to talk about. We're already seeing some of that up here into the Great Lakes region this evening. You can see this batch of snow moving through northern Wisconsin and Michigan before that kind of begins to die down going into tomorrow afternoon. And tomorrow afternoon looks like a relatively nice day for much of us in the Midwest before getting into tomorrow evening and the storm begins to move in. So with that, again, we'll start with some widespread rain down here to the south in areas we already talked about along the Ohio River Valley. But in terms of that snow, I do expect a pretty hefty band of snow here on the northern side of this, working through areas around Chicago, especially north of Chicago, I think, though, and into southern Wisconsin, and then right through the heart of Michigan, getting this big band of snow to move through Friday afternoon and even into Friday evening before, once again, as we talked about, this begins to work out of the region going into Saturday morning and then focuses on the northeast next. So snow here, overall 1 to 3 inches, pretty likely, but definitely some spots getting into that 3 to 5 inch range here, I think, into central Michigan, having a pretty high chance of passing that 3-inch threshold in a pretty widespread way. So we'll definitely watch for that as well through these regions. And again, most of that will fall during the afternoon and evening on Friday of this week. So now moving to the northeast here, again, pretty nice weather tomorrow for Thursday. I think maybe some rain into the overnight tonight and into tomorrow morning's commute, or even some snow up here into the higher elevations. But once we get into tomorrow afternoon, things begin to clear up here into the northeast, and we have an overall nice afternoon for Thursday. And even Friday looks to be pretty nice for most of us in New England and into the northeast before then going into Friday evening, the storm system moves in. And with that, we're going to have a lot of rain along the I-95 corridor down here from D.C. up through New York City. And then some snow, though, on the north side here into kind of the ski country and into upstate New York. And you can see that moves through into the overnight Friday and into kind of Saturday morning here. Some widespread heavy snow, maybe as far south as Boston, seeing some snow out of this. But I think the heaviest snow will likely be up into ski country into Vermont and New Hampshire. And then this storm continues into, again, the Saturday morning and even into Saturday afternoon, especially for areas up into Maine and New Hampshire before this thing finally clears out going into Sunday. So that's the northeast, and looking at those snow totals, again, this could get as far south as Boston with some impressive totals, but it's going to be such a fine line there that I really think the highest totals will be up here into ski country, with 6 to 12 inches being likely for many of us there in the higher elevations. Boston, really tough forecast right now. I'm thinking more 3 to 5. Then further south from there, could see 1 to 3 inches here into Connecticut, Rhode Island, northern New Jersey, and northern Pennsylvania out of this storm system before all is said and done. So, one more thing to talk about here before I let you go. Those temperatures. I do want to mention the temperatures here. Again, we're going to have a really warm day tomorrow on Thursday. So this is Thursday afternoon. You can see well above average temperatures here. And again, I'll have to change the color so you can see that. But very well above average temperatures here across the East Coast and into the South before then on Friday afternoon, we get kind of, again, this low pressure to form. So the places that it's snowing, where we get that dynamic cooling, we will have colder temperatures, but still overall above average temperatures on Friday afternoon. And then on Saturday afternoon, we get kind of more of an average day, I guess, but still nonetheless slightly above average for most of us in the East. And then as we get into next week, actually this is, sorry, I'm back up. This is Sunday afternoon. Sorry, fumbling my words here, but Sunday afternoon, another really warm day for most of us. And then as we get into next week, that trend looks to continue for at least the first half of next week. And then after that, we'll kind of see, but there have been hints long range that we do get another shot of pretty cold air to dive down out of Canada and bring some below average temperatures here for at least someone in the lower 48. And I think maybe even some of us east of the Rockies. I know most of that cold air has been stuck out west recently, but we'll see if that changes going into kind of the middle of March. So with all that said, one, thank you for joining me today. I know this one was probably a bit longer than some of the other videos, and let me just check my clock. Yeah, this one does appear to be a bit longer. But anyway, I do appreciate you sticking around, and I just want to make sure everyone's staying safe out there. So make sure you send this to anyone who you think might not quite be aware of what's coming over the next couple of days, just so everyone is in the loop. But with all that said, make sure you have a great and safe rest of your Wednesday, and I will see you all tomorrow on Thursday.